So what if the fossils of dinosaurs buried right under our feet, the water that we found on Mars, and even the beautiful rings of Saturn, what if they were all connected? What if all of it was born from one single, absolutely catastrophic day in our planet's history? We're about to explore a pretty radical theory that says exactly that, a framework that could flip our understanding of Earth and really our whole solar system completely on its head.
Now, the guy behind this whole idea, Darrell Waters, he's very upfront. He doesn't start with a fancy degree or a list of publications. He starts with a simple, annoying question that bugged him for 40 years while he was driving his truck across the country, looking at landscapes that, to him, just didn't seem to fit the official story.
And this is the question. This is the paradox that launched his whole unified theory of geologic history. See, on the one hand, science tells us that to become a fossil, something has to be buried, like instantly. But on the other hand, the dominant theory in geology is all about slow, gradual change over millions and millions of years. For Darrell, those two ideas just couldn't exist in the same universe. They didn't add up.
All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to start with that nagging question about fossils, then reconstruct a lost world that doesn't exist anymore. We'll watch it get destroyed, and then see how that one single event could explain not just the geology of our planet, but some of the biggest mysteries across our entire solar system.
So what exactly were these contradictions? What did a guy driving a truck see that, in his opinion, mainstream science was just kind of glossing over?
Well, the biggest issue is this. Paleontologists know you need to bury something fast and deep to make a fossil. A T-Rex that just drops dead on a plane, gets eaten by scavengers, or just rots away. It doesn't sit there for a million years patiently waiting for dust to cover it. Waters just couldn't get past that. The need for a sudden catastrophe seems to clash with the theory of slow, steady change.
Okay, so to solve that fossil puzzle, the theory says we have to completely rethink our planet. We have to imagine an ancient Earth, a world before the catastrophe, a world we would not even recognize today.
First, picture a world with a much, much thicker atmosphere, way richer in oxygen and CO2. This dense sky would have acted like a giant filter, blocking a ton of harmful UV radiation and creating a sort of global greenhouse.
Next, imagine this, an Earth with no axial tilt. That means no seasons, no winter, no summer, no ice caps at the poles. Just one stable, unbelievably lush climate all over the entire planet.
And here's where it gets really wild. The theory suggests the planet itself was physically bigger, and a larger radius would mean lower surface gravity. Why does that matter? Well, the theory argues that's the only way you get the biomechanics of an 80-ton sauropod to actually work without its own body crushing it. So this stable, giant, lush world was, according to this model, sitting on a ticking time bomb. It was doomed by a single event that would not just end that world, but create the one we're on right now.
This is the absolute heart of the theory. It's built on an idea called the hydroplate model, and it proposes a single, violent event, a planetary-scale pressure cooker failure that unleashed the oceans not from rain clouds above, but from massive chambers beneath the Earth's crust.
And it supposedly happened in a clear sequence. First, a closer moon was flexing the crust back and forth, generating incredible heat. This superheated all that trapped underground water until it became supercritical, this weird explosive state that's not quite liquid, not quite gas. And finally, the crust gives way. It cracks, and all that water erupts in a hypersonic jet with unimaginable force. So how in the world do you get from a planetary rupture to the planet we live on? Well, this framework argues that this one event sculpted pretty much every major feature on our planet, not over eons, but in a matter of weeks.
Yeah, this slide here reframes, well, everything. Where mainstream geology sees slow, gradual processes, this model sees the direct result of that catastrophe. Sedimentary layers aren't a clock measuring deep time, they're what's left over after a massive global flood sorted everything by density. And oil deposits? They're not from slowly cooked algae. They're the entire biosphere of that old world, flash-buried and pressure-cooked into fuel, all at once.
Now, the scars from that rupture weren't just carved into our planet. They were literally blasted into space. And this is where the theory takes a huge turn. It challenges the whole idea of panspermia, the idea that life came to Earth from space, by asking, what if life was violently exported from Earth?
Let's start with a genuine mystery right next door. Our moon is lopsided. The side that faces us is covered in these huge, dark plains and has a much thinner crust than the far side. For decades, planetary scientists have wondered why.
And the theory's explanation is brilliantly simple. That hypersonic jet of rock and water that erupted from the Earth, it slammed directly into the side of the moon that was facing us, coating it with pulverized Earth crust. It didn't just hit the moon, it resurfaced it.
The theory then tells us to zoom out and look at other big questions. Where did all the water on Mars really come from? How did Saturn get those giant icy rings? And why do comets have the specific chemical signatures that they do?
And here's the key idea. All that material that got blasted off Earth, it had to go somewhere. The theory claims it achieved escape velocity, and that single jet of ejecta is what delivered water to Mars, formed Saturn's rings, and created a whole bunch of comets that still carry Earth's chemical fingerprint. The implication is just staggering. Maybe Earth wasn't seeded by space, maybe Earth seeded the solar system.
Okay, I know what you're probably thinking. This sounds like an amazing, epic sci-fi story. But the author is very clear this isn't just a story. It's a scientific framework that makes specific, concrete, and most importantly, testable predictions using data that we already have.
One of the absolute boldest predictions is this idea of a solar system mass balance. It's actually pretty simple. Calculate the volume of all the deep ocean trenches, the supposedly empty chambers. Then calculate the mass of all that extra water and rock we see on Mars, the Moon, and comets, and so on. The theory predicts those two numbers will match. The bottom of the Mariana Trench is directly connected to the ice on Mars.
And it doesn't stop there. There are all these other fascinating predictions. For instance, the theory suggests that the Chicxulub impactor that killed the dinosaurs wasn't an asteroid from space, but a huge chunk of Earth's own mantle that got blasted up and fell back down. It predicts that the core of the oldest trees on Earth should be ringless, a biological fossil from that ancient world without seasons. It's just one testable claim after another.
And that, really, is the ultimate challenge posed by this theory. It's not asking for a trillion-dollar space mission. It's arguing that the proof, or the evidence to completely debunk it, is already here. It's sitting in our lab drawers and our data archives, just waiting for someone to connect the dots in a completely new way.
So what's the takeaway? Is this just a really compelling story that weaves dozens of anomalies into one grand, sweeping narrative? Or is it a legitimate scientific framework that could rewrite history? The theory's challenge is that the answers aren't out there in a distant galaxy. They might be right here, hidden in the data we've already collected, and maybe, just maybe, in the deepest trenches of our very own oceans.